We continue our discussion now on different forms of discrimination to mark Zero Discrimination Day today. The topic we're looking at this hour is gender discrimination in the workplace. This can come in many forms, including differences in salaries and job promotions. Here to discuss this further is Labour attorney from Norton Rose Fulbright, Peal Mathonsi. Thanks so much for your time, Peal.
Thank you very much, Annelie.
So to start off with, who bears the brunt of the majority of discrimination in the workplace in South Africa?
Well, Annelie, that's a very broad question, but what I can tell you is that previously we would say that it was just limited to saying it's a disparity between favoring a man over a woman. But the world has now evolved in such a way where even people who identify differently based on their gender and even their sexual orientation are faced with instances in the workplace where they're discriminated against. So I would say that it's majority everyone at this point in time. It just depends on your choice. Yeah.
So even men experience discrimination in the workplace,
absolutely.
Though that might be limited in a patriarchal society.
Yes, 100%.
So is South African labour legislation progressive enough to address issues specifically like the pay gap, which we know has been in the media recently?
Yes. Well, I mean, if you look at the Employment Equity Act, Annelie, it specifically prohibits any form of unfair discrimination, and that can be on various grounds. But, I mean, sexual orientation and gender identity is one big one that prohibits that kind of discrimination. If you look at Section 5 and Section 6.1, it requires employees to incorporate into their practices and policies rules and regulations that make provision for those kind of things. Admittedly, I mean, it's still a contentious issue. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done insofar as unequal pay for work of equal value. But if you are in a situation where you are faced with that kind of predicament, the legislation makes it available for you to indicate that, look, I am being paid unequally and I want to launch a claim. And in instances where the courts find that there is unfair discrimination based on your gender, in that instance, you can be, I mean, the company can be liable for up to 24 months compensation just on that claim. So, I mean, our provisions are there, legislation is there, and it caters for instances such as the gender parity issue that is very high up in the news, like you have indicated. But I would imagine that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in creating awareness when it comes to those kind of topical issues.
And perhaps in creating the kinds of environments where people feel they are free to speak up when a situation of discrimination arises.
Yes.
Intimidation in the workplace.
Yes.
Perhaps, you know, the legislation is there, but oftentimes unfair HR practices or a lack of awareness may prevent people from speaking out.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the court's jurisprudence, for example, has highlighted the importance of not just discriminating a person simply because they've spoken out. I'm sure you're well aware of a case that had come out in around 2018 where a top CEO of a JSE-listed company was found to have been jointly and severally liable for having impaired the dignity of a female employee who, after speaking out when she was overlooked for a senior executive position for a second time, indicated that she was going to resign. They then tried to call her into a meeting to try and retract that resignation, and in that resignation the CEO indicated that she was nothing more than an employee equity female appointee. And, you know, those are the kind of instances, I mean, that's not only discriminatory, it's also degrading to a certain extent because it also speaks lowly of your capabilities outside of your gender.
And it speaks lowly, furthermore, of our attempts to create an equal society.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, if you are faced in a situation where now your reputation is known, or as a company or as an organization, as having been a gender biased company, you stand the risk of losing high talented individuals that would not want to work in an organization like that. And it also has an effect on productivity where people are just feeling marginalized and wouldn't want to work in that kind of a toxic environment. So companies or organizations need to be more responsible in addressing these, not only at a higher level, but even at a lower tier level, and need to address these things more vocally and go beyond creating awareness. It's also more about enforcing or putting enforcement measures for instances where people are faced with that situation.
So apart from decisions made by management structures, what is the role of men co-workers in speaking out against gender-based discrimination in the workplace? I mean, we're very unlikely to see men saying, oh, well, I'll take a pay cut so my female colleague can earn the same as me. But there are still platforms where they can partake.
Absolutely. And it speaks also at top-tier management. I mean, if they could use their position as an advantage to advance those kind of changes into the workplace, that would really be a good starting point. I mean, South African legislation, to go back to what we had spoken to about earlier, if you look at the amendments in the parental leave provisions, for example, they've now changed it to recognize that caring for children is not just for women. It's not limited to women anymore. Men are also, I mean, they're supposed to also care for children as well. So those kind of changes, and if you are sitting at top-tier management level, if you are a change agent for those kind of things and you advance those kind of policies actively into the workplace, that is you taking or playing your part in making sure that there's no unfair discrimination within the workplace. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much for your contribution. We've been speaking to Peal Mathonsi, a Labour attorney from Norton Rose Fulbright, in our continued discussions about Zero Discrimination Day.